7:43 p.m. The lights went out, not just a blackout, not just a power flicker in a sleepy neighborhood. The entire grid collapsed. From Denver to Salt Lake City. From Phoenix to Santa Fe. Hospitals flatlined. Airports froze mid-boarding. Traffic tunnels turned into graves in waiting. 1 second, civilization. The next, silence. They called it the Black Vein Incident, a name pulled from nightmares. Because for the first time in 60 years, the Western energy backbone of the United States collapsed like a deck of cards. No warning, no ransom, no chance to respond. CNN cut its programming. Fox went into rolling updates. Reddit lit up with chaos threads. Is this cyber war? I'm stuck in an elevator with my diabetic son. My hospital just lost power and backup didn't kick in. Someone help. And then, a TikTok video, just 16 seconds. A young mother, eyes wide, screaming for help. Camera shaking. In the background, a neonatal incubator. Dark, silent, her baby's chest barely moving. The caption? No power, NICU down, she's only 8 hours old. Please. By 1 p.m., it had 4 million views. By 8:05, it was on national news. By 8:11, the president was briefed. The grid wasn't just down, it had been breached. But what no one knew, not yet, was that in a small apartment above a Vietnamese deli in Denver, a dormant code had just blinked awake, while the world unraveled. In a dim apartment above a Vietnamese deli that closes too early in winter, someone was listening, not to the chaos, but to the current, the hum beneath the panic. Her name is Olivia Nguyen. Age, 32, energy systems engineer, unmarried, no kids. 1 dying ficus plant, 2 cracked monitors, and an entire emergency grid recovery system no one ever believed in. She built it alone, on weekends, off the clock, on the company's shadow servers, the kind you're not supposed to touch. Her proposal, 43 pages, detailed, exhaustive, obsessive. Title, Adaptive Autonomous Grid Recovery, Real-Time Voltage Rerouting, AI-Based Load Anticipation, Zero Latency Triage Protocols for Blackout Events. The board's response, intriguing but unnecessary. No budget. Come back when it's urgent. They offered her a consolation prize. Test it if you want, off record, just don't get in the way. So she did, every night. Long after the badge scanner stopped beeping. Long after the janitor went home, just her, and the hum of machines, and a whisper, soft and desperate, just once. Let it save someone, please. They called her the Thermostat girl. Even her family, especially her family. At dinner, her mother would smile politely and explain to guests. Olivia, she fixes wires, something with backup circuits, handy girl. Her little brother once joked, she's the one making sure your AC doesn't go rogue. Then laughed, like that was the punchline. But what none of them saw was her sleeping in the server room during snowstorms. Because the logic tree wouldn't compile clean, what they never asked was why she kept going. Even after being told no 100 times, she didn't need applause. She needed the code to work, because someday, someone somewhere might need power. When no one else could give it, she wasn't always invisible. But it happened slowly. Like a dimmer switch turning down a room, one insult at a time. The memory that stays with her most wasn't from a lab, it was from a funeral. She was 27, standing by the incense burner, holding a folded tissue. Her grandmother had just passed. 3 generations of family gathered under one roof. Black clothes, white flowers, and polite grief. A cousin cracked a joke about medical school. Laughter bubbled at the edge of the silence. And then her mother said, quietly, but just loud enough, "Good thing Olivia didn't become a doctor. She would have killed the patients with her forgetfulness." The room laughed, genuine, full laughter. Even the aunts with bad knees chuckled. Someone patted Olivia on the back like it was a compliment. She smiled, but inside, something folded, neat, small, tucked behind her ribs and never opened again. Another time. Her brother's graduation party. He had just finished his second year at MIT, double major, robotics and theoretical physics. He gave a small speech in the living room, poured wine like a CEO, everyone beamed. When Olivia walked in, someone asked, "Wait, you work in tech too, right?" Kevin answered for her. "Sort of. She plays with circuits at a utility company. You know, like backup wiring, thermostat stuff." He made air quotes around systems. People laughed again. No one noticed Olivia's plate slipping in her hand, or how she kept staring at the floor, pretending to check her shoes. She applied to Google X once, then to NASA's Smart Grid Lab, then to a global energy startup backed by billionaires. Each time, the rejection said some version of promising but lacks visionary edge, technically competent but not disruptive, not a cultural fit. She stopped applying after the fourth one, not because she gave up, but because she realized the system doesn't recognize you. When your genius looks like quiet resilience instead of glossy slideshows. So she went back to her server room. Alone, she printed out a photo, her mother, in her 20s, sharp-jawed, holding her med school diploma with pride, that same smile that cut through a funeral years ago. Olivia taped it behind the main breaker panel, at eye level, so that every time she debugged a loop, every time the code refused to run, and she'd look up and whisper, "I'm not doing this to prove you wrong. I'm doing this to save someone, even if you never see it." The silence wasn't still. It pulsed, like a giant holding its breath, like the moment between a lightning strike and the sound. By the third minute, dispatch centers were paralyzed. Software frozen, manual overrides jammed. Engineers staring at black monitors, cursing into dead mics. The military was mobilizing. FEMA prepped for mass casualty protocol. Hospitals reported critical systems failing. The president's team issued a level 5 cybersecurity alert. DEFCON buzzed. No one had answers. No one had control. Until second 93. Something moved, not at the top, not through official lines. Line 23B. A dormant loop. One not registered on any national backup registry. One no one had access to, except her, and it breathed. At St. Mercy Children's Hospital, a nurse screamed when the incubator lit back up. The baby, the one from the viral TikTok, gasped, a flutter of fingers, her chest lifted, the oxygen kicked in. A pulse returned to the monitor. No one had touched anything. The backup generators had failed, but this came from somewhere else. At Denver International Airport, a tower operator blinked as the runway lights flickered on. In precise, sequenced intervals. Runway 4, then 12B, then taxi lane 7. One pilot's voice broke through the static. "Tower, we just got power. Confirm that's you." No one answered, because no one had pressed a button. Back in the newsroom, a reporter stood in front of the blackout map, still glowing red and orange. But then, the board began to blink green. One sector, then 4, then a dozen, and she said live, it appears, hold on. We're receiving confirmation of unexpected power restoration. Some kind of silent reroute protocol. No official release has been made, but hospitals are lighting back up, and air traffic seems to be stabilizing. The question now is, who's doing this and how? In a room no one remembered existed. On a system never approved. On code no one had read. Olivia's work had awakened. And for the first time, it was doing exactly what she built it to do. Not for glory, not for a headline, but for life. By the time the headlines caught up, the state was back online, hospitals lit, planes landed safely. Children went to bed under electric stars. CNN ran the phrase nonstop, prototype unknown, designer undisclosed. But inside the system logs, buried 3 layers deep, was a line of metadata, user ID, ONG32. Olivia Nguyen. It didn't take long. An intern recognized the tag, her inbox caught fire. Offers, interviews, invitations, she didn't open most of them, but there was one message, tucked between the LinkedIn notifications, and the university's request to honor a distinguished alumna. Subject line, Connoy. Just 2 lines. M letter 1EB9, Zin L letter 1ED7I. Hamne M letter 1EB9 dot H letter 1EA5 Ycon Mat TR letter 1B0 letter 1EDB CG I letter 1EDD M letter 1EB9 Kong H I letter 1EC3 UN letter 1ED5I. That was it. No punctuation, no emojis, no request for a call, just a mother. Finally seeing her daughter, not through the lens of pride or profession, but as whole. Olivia stared at the screen. She didn't cry, she didn't smile. She just closed the laptop, walked down 2 flights of stairs, unlocked the server room, and printed the email. She taped it beside the photo. The old one, her mother at 24, fresh out of med school. That photo had watched Olivia fail, and build, and break, and stay. Now it had company, 2 women, 2 sentences, 30 years apart, finally sharing the same wall. There was a time. Olivia was 6, when her mother let her hold a stethoscope. It told her, "This helps people live. Maybe one day you'll have your own tool." Back then, Olivia thought it would be a scalpel. She was wrong, it was code. By morning, the news cycle had shifted from panic to praise. A catastrophic cyber attack, neutralized by an unknown safety system. Hospitals report 0 loss of life. Airports resume full function within 5 minutes, unprecedented. Someone saved 6 million lives, but who? Then came the breadcrumbs, system logs, router pings, a single internal tag, ONG32. By noon, the name was everywhere. Olivia Nguyen, the thermostat girl who saved the grid. Unknown engineer, quietly prevents national crisis. The woman who built what we didn't deserve. Her LinkedIn inbox flooded. MIT emailed twice. Google X offered to discuss leadership roles. The White House requested her presence at a cybersecurity summit. She didn't reply. That evening, the governor of Colorado stood on the steps of the Capitol, sleeves rolled up, voice steady. This was a near miss of catastrophic scale. We were seconds away from disaster. We owe our lives to a system we didn't even know existed, and to the people who quietly built it. He thanked emergency responders, state engineers, unnamed technical staff. Never said her name. He didn't have to, because by then, every screen in every home had already shown her face. At the office where her proposal was once rejected, someone unlocked the old shadow grid files. The header read, Adaptive Autonomous Grid Recovery Draft 4 by O. Nguyen, her old manager, stared at it in silence, then whispered, almost too quietly to hear, "We were wrong." But Olivia, she didn't attend the summit, didn't go on CNN, didn't even update her resume. Instead, she went home, made tea, fed the ficus plant that still refused to grow, and opened a folder marked Version 5, Solar Integration for Rural Schools. Because for her, saving the world was never the goal. Keeping the lights on, for those the world forgot, was 10 years later. Olivia received a letter, not an email, not a tag, a real envelope, cream-colored, stamped, postmarked from New Mexico. The handwriting was crooked, almost like it was still learning how to be sure of itself. She opened it slowly, expecting nothing. Inside, a single sheet of paper, lined, torn from a school notebook. At the top, written in pencil, "Dear Miss Olivia, my name is Lena. I'm 10. I live with my mom and my baby brother. She told me you saved me when I was just born and very, very small. She said there was a night when the world went dark, and I stopped breathing. But you made the lights come back, and I got to live. I don't really understand electricity, or codes, or the grid. But I know this, I have dreams and books and dance recitals because of you. Thank you for turning the lights back on when no one else could." At the bottom, one drawing, a little girl holding a flashlight with beams spreading into stars. Olivia folded the paper, held it in both hands, and for the first time since that night, she let herself cry. Not from exhaustion, not from isolation, not from rejection, but from knowing that in the quiet, in the dark, where no one clapped and no cameras flashed, she had lit a life. 3 years after Lena's letter, Olivia moved again, not to Washington, not to a research institute, but to a forgotten town in the Midwest, where the main street had more cracks than cars, and the school still ran on Windows XP. She bought an old grain warehouse, gutted it herself, sanded down the rust, ran the first solar panel line from a shed she built by hand, and painted one sign by the front door, crooked but bold, "Not just the thermostat girls." It wasn't a lab, wasn't a startup, it was a space for the ones who take apart flashlights just to see what makes them glow, for the girls told they ask too many questions, for the ones called bossy instead of brilliant. One of them was named Jasmine, 13, second-hand hoodie, big glasses, bigger questions. Her teachers once said she was difficult, that she couldn't focus. That STEM might not be her thing, until Olivia handed her a soldering iron and said, "This wire, it doesn't care about your report card. It only wants to connect." Jasmine grinned, hands trembling, and made her first closed circuit. 1 month later, she built a low-power solar array that lit up the entire classroom. Someone asked her why she did it. She shrugged and said, "Because I don't want the lights to go out, not ever again. Not in schools, not in hospitals, not in kids like me." Olivia watched from the corner, said nothing, just smiled. And in that moment, among wires and cardboard, coffee cups and copper coils, she realized she hadn't just restored the grid, she had rebuilt belief. And the current, it would keep flowing, because the next spark was already here, tangled in braids, wearing chipped nail polish, and holding a multimeter like it was magic. I used to think I needed their approval, a nod, a smile across the dinner table, a quiet, proud sentence that began with, "That's our Olivia." I chased that for years, tried to earn it with promotions, patents, all-nighters in server rooms that smelled like burnt dust and caffeine. Until one day, I stopped, not because I gave up, but because I outgrew the question. Real light doesn't need fireworks, it doesn't need applause, it doesn't beg to be seen, it just needs not to be extinguished by the weight of someone else's expectation. And once I understood that, I started to glow from the inside out. If you've ever been overlooked, if they laughed at what you build, or called you too quiet, or said your work was nice but not urgent, if you've ever lit something no one noticed, held a system together, with tape, faith, and invisible hands, I see you. And I promise you are not small, you are not late, you are not behind, you're just quiet, like voltage, like roots, like revolution. And that's not weakness. That's power. Waiting for the right moment. If this story felt a little bit like yours, drop a comment, say, I light my own path. Because you do, and one day, someone's world might depend on the light you built when no one was watching.